Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be here. Chad off early for the holidays, much deserved. And I wonder how much news he actually follows when he's off, because whenever I'm off, I really try to just isolate entirely. First thing, gas prices barely fallen at all. Thank you, Joe Biden, for all the work you've done to give us almost no change in the world of gas prices. Second, former President Donald Trump did an interview with Maria Bartiromo. What I thought was really interesting about this conversation are two different things. First, Trump crapping all over Biden on his weakness in the world of China. It is nuts, by the way, as Omicron variant becomes a conversation that we talk about more and more and more, that we still have almost no interest in finding out the origins of COVID-19 and forcing China to be a lot more honest than they've been with the world as this continues to circle back. We continue to get to, new variant, new conversation. Most Americans totally over it. And yet you'd think politicians would be fighting much harder for those battles. But Trump believes that, Biden's got one too many problems in going too hard after China.
And Biden said, I will solve it. Well, he couldn't solve the H1N1, which was another very minor by comparison. That was a disaster, and everybody knew that. But he said he's going to solve it. Well, as you know, and everybody reports it, even the fake news sometimes, but there are more deaths this year than there were with me. And we have all of these vaccines, and we have all of these incredible therapeutics. They're not doing their job. They don't know what the hell they're doing. The mandates are killing our economy.
But Joe Biden still has not brought up the origins of COVID to Xi Jinping. They spoke 4 times this year. Why do you think that is?
Because he's afraid of him. And I think he's afraid of the fact that they gave billions of dollars to his son. And
so they have something on him.
Yeah, of course they do.
Of course they do. Very, very interesting take from our former president, also talking about being afraid. I think Biden is probably afraid of most other world leaders, certainly not strong with Vladimir Putin. Again, as a great example, they do a phone call, our president and the leader of Russia, and then after the phone call and Biden apparently threatening very strong reactions to any sort of additional moves by Russia in certain parts of that country, they went ahead and sent more of their military to areas that should be making Biden mad, and yet it did not because, he's Biden. There's also this. It came up with Maria and our former president. It also came up with Charlemagne the God and our current vice president, Kamala Harris. Is Biden our president? Is he actually in charge? He often doesn't know what's going on in the world of things his administration is doing. That's one sign usually that you're not actually making the decisions. He often makes jokes about how others control his day-to-day, whether it's his staff, his wife, other people he works with. He calls people president who are not him. This is something our president does often. He refers to President Fauci or President Harris often in the weirdest of ways. Here is Trump and Maria talking about whether or not Biden's even in charge.
He called Kamala Harris president again.
Oh.
Do you think someone else is directing him?
Well, I never called Mike Pence president. I'll tell you, I can't imagine what's going on. It's hard to believe.
Who's running the country?
Well, think of it. It was so obvious in this case because 450,000, he was incensed. He was very upset by that question asked by a very good reporter, actually. But he was very angry at that question. Like, how dare you? What a stupid question. Of course, the next morning, he was saying how, this is something that we think is excellent. That really means, in the truest sense, that he is not running the country. Because there's no way you go from indignation to, that's wonderful.
I can't fight any of those points that our former president is making. You can't really be the kind of guy who is so upset at a question and then you go back and find out, my administration's doing what now? And by the way, what Trump is talking about is the amount of money that might be given to those who crossed into our country illegally, got sent back to the country they're from, and then we might have lost their kids. These are families that got separated. They might get $500,000, these families, whether or not the children are children that wanted to go disappear into our country or not. I don't know any of the logistics into any of that, but that's the question that Peter Doocy of Fox was asking of Biden that made Biden very mad before he found out it was accurate, that there was debate and conversation about giving about $500,000 per family to those who got separated by the Biden administration. Moving on, this is the other comment or the other conversation I was talking about. Charlemagne the God asked this question of Kamala Harris, whether or not Joe Manchin is the president or Joe Biden. This feels like a fairly innocent question, in my opinion. I know it's loaded in a very simplistic way, but it is barely loaded. This is not a challenging Republican-style question being lobbed at the vice president. And her team tried to tank the interview, as you'll hear. And then eventually the vice president tried to be very angry. But even her anger seemed utterly, utterly crap to me. Here we go.
Who's the superhero that's going to speak against Joe Manchin? No. I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry. I interrupted.
I'm sorry.
It's Simone.
Simone, who apparently is her team, is trying to end this interview by saying that Kamala has a technical issue that she definitely didn't have.
Sorry, Charlamagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice President?
So I'm sorry. We got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, so who's the
can hear you.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne.
Come
on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is...
You know, I feel like you can hear it in Kamala's brain, the decision-making that she's going through right now and how angry she's supposed to get, how mad it's supposed to make her that some Republicans accuse her of actually being in charge, because she's the kind of person that I think would like to actually be calling the shots. She certainly ran for the office herself. I don't think she's offended by that criticism of our current president. I think she has to pretend to be, which is something that our vice president does very poorly. The acting skill's not there.
Kamala Harris. And the reality is, because we are in office, we do the things like the child tax credit, which is going to reduce black child.
Yeah. And then she's going to start going into all the talking points. But here again, this is the deciding to get mad portion of the conversation. You can actually hear, I think, her brain telling her, no, matter. Get madder.
I can hear you.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No, wait, let me get a little mad.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't
Wait a minute.
Start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not
I said
president.
Republican. Let me get
you think
super
Joe
mad.
Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris.
I'm the vice president.
And the reality is, because we are in...
I don't know. She has no idea where she's going. Train wreck of an interview is what a lot of people are calling that one. Certainly interesting as far as the questions that get asked to the vice president and the way she handles them. And I'm the vice president, sir. Have a good day. Simone, get back in here and cancel this interview now. We need to pretend it never happened. That's the other thing about Kamala, just real quick. They all thought, I think, in the world of Democrats, that if Joe was a one-term president, if he won it all, that she would be the heir apparent. She has done nothing but obliterate her ability to command any kind of stage or any kind of support, even from Democrats, in the first year that she sat in the position of vice president, a position that usually doesn't really get you that much attention. But the way in which she handled or didn't handle what happened at the border, the performance aspects, you know it with a lot of politicians. They put on a show more so than most other humans do in their day-to-day lives. But I can absolutely feel the inauthenticity from our vice president, more so than most, even in her own profession. And even there, and I laugh quite a bit, and I am shocked quite a bit at the way in which this continues to go. But Charlemagne the God, not challenging as far as interviewers go, obliterated the vice president, who at one point apparently was a very successful attorney and actually did fairly well in the debate stage too. Now can't seem to succeed at all in most of these conversations. One other quick thing I do want to play, and I just can't get over this. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying that if you're vaccinated, you can travel this holiday season, and if you're not vaccinated, you cannot. travel. And even more importantly, he's going to say, and I'll play it in a second, that if you are vaccinated, you should know the status of everyone you are around. And if you find out that people aren't vaccinated, maybe you shouldn't be around them. What a lovely way to spend the holidays. I have a huge problem with this, and it connects to the Omicron variant that's all over the news right now. But first, here's Fauci.
No, I do. If you are vaccinated and boosted and are prudent when you travel, when you're in an airport, to be wearing a mask all the time, you have to be wearing a mask on a plane. Do not do things like go to gatherings where there are people who you do not know what their vaccination status is. If you do that, and some people are even going the extra step or the extra mile, of maybe even getting tested when you have people.
I feel like he's about to say, and put a scarlet letter on anyone in your family or anyone in your life that you know is unvaccinated, push them into a corner and maybe lock them in a basement of some kind. That feels like what he's saying. But here's the biggest problem if I'm going to try to make a medical argument, one I'm ill-equipped to make for sure, with a doctor as well-known and as much an expert as a Dr. Fauci is. The Omicron variant, this would be the only question, my follow-up question, has shown an ability to evade the immunity that is caused by vaccines or even getting previous versions of COVID. And what I mean by evade immunity is you can still get it. You can still transmit it to others. There is data, and this is the way that we all play this kind of semantic game. There is data that shows that maybe you'd have a much less severe case of even Omicron, depending on your boost status or your previous infection status, all that kind of stuff. And Omicron might just be a very mild case of COVID, as more data is emerging that says that as well. But in all of those scenarios, you're not really protected from getting the virus, from becoming infected, and from transmitting it to others. So all of that advice Fauci just gave was utter crap. There is no difference between those who are vaccinated and those who are unvaccinated in that one world, at least in the preliminary data we're seeing. So if it's safe to travel for the vaccinated and safe to congregate together for the vaccinated, then it's just as safe for the unvaccinated to do it in the world of preventing or not preventing transmission. According to the data I'm seeing, and again, just preliminary results, and I'll take my tinfoil hat and take a break off after this segment, but it seems as though that even if you're vaccinated, you could still get it, which means that an entire Christmas gathering of all fully vaccinated individuals, whether that's booster or not, could still get and still transmit to others the Omicron variant, which is slowly becoming and will become the dominant variant in our country. So on that note, with that being a very likely to be accurate statement that needs a little bit more data and science to prove out to be true, there is no difference. And so this begging for people to get vaccinated by Fauci and doing it the way they're doing it, by guilting some, scarlet lettering others, all of that is just tied to an agenda that, again, becomes this very political talking point and not necessarily any amount of science. And that's always the mistake of the Fauci, is going with the politics instead of the science and then getting, caught in those conversations. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Tinfoil hat off.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to have you with us. I thought this was interesting that Louis C.K. swept the internet the other day. He honestly took over. Lots and lots of people talking about him. Why, you ask? Well, Louis C.K., the once very famous, very well-regarded comedian, then the cancel culture guy who got completely canceled because of, honestly, like really weird, upsetting, I don't know what the right word is, but creepy stuff he was doing, including, playing with himself. Anyway, he is now trying to come back. He ran a commercial on Saturday Night Live during one of the breaks there. This commercial is about as innocent as I think you can get in the world of Louis C.K. There are some his style jokes in there, but this is a 30-second ad that's mostly just a song, and people are up in arms on social media talking about all the different ways in which this is racially unfair since he's a white guy. Here, let me play the spot first.
Are you picturing it? It's good. It's really good. Nobody gets pregnant. It's a lot of fun. And meanwhile, the Chinese baby and the Jamaican nanny are just alone looking at each other like, what are we doing? What is this?
That's the whole spot. Those are the only two jokes. And again, Louis C.K. does push a lot of boundaries in his comedy that he could have used as examples. Those are the things he went with. And everybody, like I said, on social media, just so upset that he's trying to still have a comedy career. I would say this about the industry he works in compared to any other industry out there is it would be the most capable of allowing for a comeback for the things that someone like a Louis C.K. Did, which again was mostly inappropriate actions that he took on himself in front of people that didn't want to see the things he was doing. That is the crime that he committed, the crime that he admitted, I should say as well, of doing to other professionals in the comedy industry. And now years later, he ran one special on Saturday Night Live, and people are up in arms. I'm not saying he deserves or doesn't deserve the comeback. I'm just saying, again, in the world of professions, his profession is probably the easiest. Or you just be a legal analyst on any kind of television station, and then I think you can get away with a lot of stuff and still wind up keeping your job. Certainly looking at you, Jeffrey Toobin. But this is it. This is what everybody's upset about today in the world of social media, that Louis has the money to buy and pay for a special just to promote it. It's not like anyone actually went to see it or heard it or was forced to listen to the comedy stylings of a person that they don't like anymore. Our cancel culture is so extreme that we feel as though someone being capable of running a commercial for a special that they're creating is too far. It's the Dave Chappelle, certainly with very different variables, Dave Chappelle demand to go away kind of thing, just run to an even crazier level. Well, that's it so far. Got to take a quick break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Quick piece of just general news. Movie theaters loved Spider-Man. Box office $253 million, the third biggest movie opening all time. The latest Spider-Man film, No Way Home. I did see it. I won't spoil it for you. I enjoyed it, but I'm a comic book nerd. It goes against every single thing that producer Phil looks for in a movie. What are the 3 rules again, real quick, Phil?
I don't go to see anything based on a comic book. I don't go to see any reboot, reimaging, or reimagining. And I don't go to see a movie with a number at the end of it.
That'd be 3 strikes and 3 misses. This movie is very out in the world of Phil. Thank you, buddy. I enjoyed it, though. I thought it was good. Obviously, a whole bunch of people, $253 million worth of tickets being sold. I don't know what that says about our movie industry. If all movies will start to see more and more interest and more box office success, or if this is just a very unique, kind of one-off thing in the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a bunch of the rumors going into the movie of what is and is not in it. Again, I won't spoil anything. I'll just say certainly a good time. But I've been to quite a few movies recently, and it was the most packed movie theater I've been in probably in the last 2 years. All right, let's move on to some real news. Joe Manchin said over the weekend to Fox News that he is not in on the Build Back Better. He cannot vote for it. He essentially has killed it because without full support from all Democrats, and of course there's other Democrats who have had questions about this, high profile, certainly. Joe Manchin is now at the forefront of every part of this conversation after these statements.
I've always said this, Brett. If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
Now, he goes on to explain a lot of the reasons that he sees a no. The first one, the most important one, being that it's just not the right time to spend this kind of money. I mean, honestly, if I were trying to make an argument with you, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, and I were to say all the different things that get funded by this Build Back Better agenda, I'm sure there's stuff you care about. I'm sure there's things I could cherry pick out and be like, hey, look, it's going to fund this project or this initiative or do well here. And you'd be like, well, that's good. That's valuable spending. But then you have to put in the context of that we are in the place we're in economically. Inflation has run amok to a degree that apparently a lot of people didn't predict. I don't know if you weren't listening to the right radio stations, the right conservative talk show hosts, but a lot of people saw this coming in those parts of the world. The rest of the world, certainly our administration, didn't seem to understand how bad inflation would get. And so it's just honestly one of those things you make as a decision every day in your life. Can I afford this, yes or no? And right now, simplistically, we cannot afford any of Build Back Better. And Joe Manchin is one of the few Democrats that gets that. I will go ahead and compare that to what Bernie Sanders said. He reacted, I think this was on CNN, just moments after the Joe Manchin audio went viral, and picked out, as I said, he cherry-picked the 2 or 3 initiatives in a plan that is just so encompassing, so many different things are in there that, of course, you're going to be able to find examples of things that you think maybe would sway voters. But that's also the problem in all of this, and the way that politics in general tries to drum up actual voter support for the things that they pass, the legislation that has tremendous spending in it, is you try to disguise all of the terrible spending with the 2 or 3 things that you think will have universal acceptance. Certainly, even in the world of the infrastructure bill, which at a time was very closely tied to the Build Back Better bill, infrastructure was something that a lot of Americans thought we needed. We certainly need to improve roads, bridges, and whatnot. That seemed to then get sort of shifted into, here's all the other stuff we're going to spend in order to give you that. It's like a trick. It's sort of like a casino where you go and they tell you how much you could win, but then you realize that you're out several $100s just a few moments after that. But here is Bernie Sanders saying how terrible Joe Manchin is as a person.
Well, I think he's going to have a lot of explaining to do to the people of West Virginia, to tell them why he doesn't have the guts to take on the drug companies and lower the cost of prescription drugs. Why he is not prepared to expand home health care. West Virginia is one of the poorest states in this country. You got elderly people and disabled people who would like to stay at home or forced into nursing homes. He's going to have to tell the people.
It's fine. I'm going to stop it for a second, and we'll jump to the tail end when he says that he wants to have a vote on it. But I will say this. This is what improves my opinion. And I'm essentially an outsider who may not know enough to have an opinion valuable here, but I'm going to try. From now on, we should require all politicians to pass one-off funding legislation. You cannot put a huge amount of things into one package, pitch us the entirety of the package knowing that we won't understand several aspects of it, and then just assume our support. I think from now on, every single politician should agree to the idea that to make it as easy for the regular American to understand that we only fund a thing at a time. I want to do it like line items in a budget and just have the politicians sit there and be like, Craig, you think this is a good idea? And I'll be like, I think that one could be, but the rest of these, no. Because that's the trick, and it's been the trick for a long time. But here is Bernie Sanders saying, let's vote. So let's get on the record that Joe Manchin hates, changes in the world of medicine, and not just everything that is Build Back Better.
And I hope that we will bring a strong bill to the floor of the Senate as soon as we can, and let Mr. Manchin explain to the people of West Virginia why he doesn't have the guts to stand up to powerful special interests.
So you want to vote on it no matter what, even if...
Absolutely.
Of course you do.
Absolutely.
Of course you do, because it's just a performance. Because every aspect of this, everything that's slammed and jammed and packaged into a funding package that's that gigantic is really just designed to be one of two things. Something that's completely greenlit with no one really paying attention to it at all, or something in which we pay attention to a very small minority of the things that exist in this plan in order to try to ridicule those who don't support it. It's a game. This is a trick, and it's annoying at the very least, and it's quite a bit more than that, I assume, to a lot of people. And Manchin, rightfully so, not even really specific to any one of the agenda pieces, is saying we don't have the money for this. Senator Bill Cassidy also spoke about Build Back Better, and said how it's just not a bill that made any sense and it crumbled on its own. And it is something, too, real quick to say, that Democrats can't get this kind of agenda passed, that our current president can't convince everyone on his side of the aisle to support his agenda. It really means that it is a terrible, terrible bill. Because Joe Manchin is not the kind of guy that gets celebrated all the time by Republicans, but certainly has been celebrated in the last few months for his opposition to what I guess a lot of Democrats just assumed was we're not going to pay attention to anything. But here's Cassidy.
I think it fell upon its own weight. It was a terrible bill. It would have added to our current inflation, which is at a 40-year high, and would have added $3 trillion in 10 years to our nation's debt and deficit. And the second most expensive item was to give a tax break to millionaires and billionaires who lived in New York, New Jersey, and states like that. I think it actually collapsed under its own weight. It was a bad, bad, bad bill.
It was a bad, bad, bad bill. And here's the more important thing to discuss in all of this. And again, kind of the track I'm on is that most Americans don't understand everything that's in that bill because it's designed to be challenging. It's designed to be difficult to suss through all of it, even for the politicians themselves, to truly understand what they are saying yes and they are saying no to. And then it becomes entirely spin, media-driven spin and politician-driven spin to pick out those certain things that they put in there for this reason. Part of the reason that Democrats even fund any of these things that you really support is because they know it helps further all the other agenda. They know that it helps get everything else along and everything else passed. So it's almost like a criminal giving away a little bit of their money. They actually say that about the cartel a lot, and it's been said in the past of the mafia, is that if you give some of your money back to the community you live in, they'll never rat you out. Actually, that's something that I think happens a lot in Mexico. There's people, El Chapo's one of them, who's very well liked in their own community because they gave a little bit of the money back while doing horrible, terrible things behind closed doors and then giving a whole lot of the money to not worthwhile causes. That's essentially what our government is trying to do with something like this. I just called Democrats the mafia. I have to realize what I've done here, but I did do it because truthfully, as this conversation continues to evolve and as more and more Democrats accuse Joe Manchin of hating, medical reform, hating anyone that's a little guy and loving the powers that be, they are just wildly and purposefully misrepresenting every part of this, becoming performers, not becoming humans. And you always wonder, I guess, if you're on some sides of the political aisle, how someone like a Donald Trump could be so successful, could come in and have a lack of respect in the worlds that previous presidents didn't, speak a certain way, make fun of people on social media. You wonder how all of those things together collectively can be attractive to half of our country if you're on the other side of the aisle. This is why. This is the reason why these things are so interesting and so fresh and so new in the world of politicians, because you have people like Bernie Sanders crapping all over Joe Manchin now for thinking that we don't have the money to spend when we don't, and accurately thinking that inflation has run wild when it has, and instead accusing him of hating reform in the world of medical insurance. It's just mind-bogglingly numbing and annoying, and it's Christmas time, people. We're only a few days away from Christmas. Let's try to find a way to have more fun. I'm going to take a break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. AOC is angry. She is upset. She's not understanding how Joe Manchin could do and say the things that Joe Manchin is doing and saying, and she feels that the old boys club has to end. I think these are all things I could have let her say. However, I'm just entertained by so many of the points. Here is AOC.
I mean, it is unconscionable the way that the Senate operates. It's fundamentally undemocratic. And now what it's doing is that it is allowing the stripping of people's voting rights across the country. We're in a crisis. 19 states have passed over 30 3 laws to limit or restrict the right to vote in the United States of America. We are beyond the time for something to pass. And my concern is that even Manchin's compromise, or the fact that he was making statements just this past week that he was just having conversations with the parliamentarian about voting rights that were illuminating. How has this not happened all year long?
Look, here's a problem. And I love it. And I was just talking about it a second ago, and I'll probably just keep talking about it today because it's just going to keep being the way that so many people navigate this conversation now. AOC is picking one issue from a plan that is just a ridiculous collection of things in order to go off on Manchin about voter rights. Voter rights, something that is such intriguingly presented by people on the left and people on the right, because in all honesty, most of the things that are happening in the world of places like Georgia actually seem to be intent on making an election have more integrity and making an election more verifiable. And yet that's a problem for people on the left. And so they turn it into a voters' rights complaint. They say that, no, this is trying to silence someone. And just the idea of needing something like a driver's license to vote shouldn't be something we have a problem with in our society. And most Americans don't. But it's just the way in which you take one aspect of a big, giant conversation, transform it as many times as possible, and then get to this world where we think now, or at least AOC wants you to think, that Manchin is anti-changes in voting rights, as opposed to anti a whole bunch of things all at once at a time when we cannot spend money on this collection of things and a ridiculous amount of money at that. Anyway, let's move on. I really like Urban Meyer, not as a coach or anything. Just the amount of stories surrounding him, and even the way in which he's kind of defiant at the ridiculous failure that was his head coaching career in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars were terrible under Urban Meyer, just utterly so. Trevor Lawrence, the prize quarterback, starting out his career, looked worse and worse week in and week out. A college coach that had a lot of success there wasn't even good at developing a young quarterback at all. He kicked a kicker at one point. That's a real story that's out there in the news and didn't break, I think, as significantly as it should have broke when it happened, as it has now that he's actually been let go. That kicker no longer with the Jaguars either, and probably doesn't enjoy being kicked by Urban Meyer. But recently he talked about how he was just not a match societally for the position, which I find amazing. Here is something he said recently in an interview. I think college has changed quite a lot. Just society has changed too. You think how hard you push. I believe there is greatness in everybody, and it's the coach's job to find that greatness, however you can do that, including maybe kicking a kicker every so often, apparently Urban. Positive encouragement, pushing them to be greater, making them work harder, identifying flaws, and trying to fix them. I think everything is so fragile right now. This is me continuing to quote Urban Meyer, asked why he doesn't have a job, and whether it's because he was caught in several different scandals in his first season as a head coach, including dancing at a bar with his name on it with a very young co-ed, even though he's a married man. That was one of the things. Doesn't come up here. He said it includes his coaching staff and how he thinks everything is so fragile right now. When I got into coaching, coaches weren't making anywhere near the kind of money, and they didn't have the agents they have now. Everything is so fragile when it used to be a team. I remember talking about it in a staff meeting 3 days ago before he got canned. I got into this profession because I had the greatest high school coach, and it was all about team and all about the huddle. Now I guess apparently you can't, if you're Urban Meyer, do the things he did and keep your job. I just love it. I love the fact that he's the kind of guy that can't admit he was bad. You know, like it's so hard for any of us to do that, I guess, to have that self-reflective moment to be like, you know what, I did this poorly. Maybe that's why some people get canceled. I don't know. But it does seem to make a lot of sense, to have a lot of value, if after the ridiculous train wreck that was this, it's kind of like actually the first year in the Biden administration, to be entirely honest. If I'm comparing those things together, Biden in his first year in office has done a real bad job. His support has gone down. A lot of people think that he mishandles most of the most important issues in our country, and a lot of people aren't sure if he's actually even in charge at all. I think it would be tremendously powerful, probably bad, and certainly not helpful, I guess, in the world of having a long political career, but powerful and new if he were to go in front of a camera and be like, you know what, I screwed up year one. I got it wrong. We're going to come back to the drawing board in year 2 and try to do better. But we've done a real bad job, because at least owning the mistake might make you think a little bit more in line with the fact that maybe they are going to do things better. It'd give you more hope. And Urban Meyer, again, same thing. I think if this guy just were able to accept the fact that he did an atrociously bad job, that maybe that gets him a little bit closer to another job in the future. I can't see anybody hiring him. I can't see, just like I can't see our country reelecting Biden right now, I can't see anyone saying that Urban Meyer is the right fit for our organization, for our school, for our, certainly not NFL. His NFL career is very over. But even college, there were rumors that he might coach Notre Dame. That certainly didn't happen. And, of course, Notre Dame has already found its new head coach after losing one. But it's just so interesting to think that a guy who was so well regarded and tried to take that step up and then failed as utterly poorly as he has still doesn't seem to think he was any part of the problem. All right, quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be here. Whenever I see a whole bunch of legal news, I always get my legal expert, my legal analyst, Rich Lenkov, who's also the host of Legal Face Off, a premier podcast in the world of all things legal news, on the show. Rich, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Always thrilled to have you on. My first question to you, there's a lot of valuable stories out there in the world of legal news. I have to ask, are you hiring Kim Kardashian in the near future?
The considerable legal talents of Kim K are highly in demand, so I'm not sure we can afford her, quite frankly.
Okay. She did pass the baby bar, but only in California, right? You're out of Chicago. You can't get her until you get her to pass, I guess, another test.
Only in California, Craig, can you not go to law school and still become a practicing attorney on the basis of your fame and fortune. So, good luck to Kim K in California.
I will tell you just one thing, and I hope I'm not alone in saying this. Anytime that she actually gets to practice law, I mean she actually gets to defend or, go after anybody in a courtroom, that's got to be televised. We have to have the Kim K rule that all of her legal arguments are televised 100%. I think that it's only fair, if you're famous for reality TV, that we can never have the cameras thrown out of that courtroom.
Some kind of mashup of Judge Judy and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I think we're on to something.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to picture that. I'm going to go out to California and go all over trying to get that to pick up. All right. Before we get into some other of the sillier things out there, let's talk about some of the more serious ones. There is a lawsuit that came up because of these tornadoes that hit parts of the Midwest. Survivors are saying that they weren't allowed to leave one of the factories that got hit that actually did cause some loss of life. Give me a little bit more information about this lawsuit and its likelihood of succeeding.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a surprising action. We know that in the wake of most natural disasters, there's a flurry of lawsuits. In particular, this case, the allegation, and there's also an OSHA investigation, is that the employees were told to stay at their jobs in the face of this coming tornado, which didn't have a ton of warning, but enough, so goes the allegation, that they could have been sent home or sent to shelter instead of staying at their workplace. So this lawsuit is proceeding, and again, because there's an OSHA investigation, that will also probably help the lawsuit. There's also some indication that there will be a lawsuit, if not a class action, against Amazon for the downstate Illinois factory that was also affected. Not a good look for Jeff Bezos in the face of this. When this was happening, when his employees were being faced with this natural disaster, he was tweeting about the latest rocket launch. So that will also be problematic for him as well.
Yeah, no, and I think he actually popped up on television the day before, day after some of this because he was introducing The Rock at some kind of award show. That might have been just before, but again, Bezos certainly not seeming as though he's at the forefront of that issue at all. Let me ask you about this. Kim Potter recently took the stand. This is in the trial as to her believing that she was using a taser, but actually shooting and killing Duante Wright. Tell me a little bit more about this story and how Kim looked on the stand.
Well, I don't think she did a great job. I mean, you never know really how the jury perceives it. In this case, on Friday, she testified in a very distraught manner. She was crying. She, had a breakdown on the stand. On the one hand, you can see that as very forced and almost fake if you're a juror. On the other hand, she was clearly distraught. We also saw on the body cam video from the day of the shooting, she basically collapsed after she realized that she had shot Duante Wright. So you never know. That's why most criminal defendants don't testify. We have seen a recent trend, however, in the Jussie Smollett case and in the Rittenhouse case of defendants testifying. I think the goal for the defense was to humanize Kim Potter as they go into the weekend and they're beginning deliberations today. Again, I don't think on balance she did a great job. I think she missed an opportunity, quite frankly, to explain why this was a mistake in her mind. She talked a lot about the traffic stop and why she did that, but she really did not explain why or how she made this fatal mistake between the taser and the gun.
Sure. That's interesting that you bring up both Rittenhouse and you bring up Jussie Smollett, because I think that those are two very good examples of very different outcomes from putting someone that you represent on the stand, not just because the court cases went the direction they went, but because Jussie, for his, and I know it wasn't televised, so we had to read through the description of it, came off utterly incoherent. And it seemed that the most basic of questions being asked by prosecution were so difficult for him to answer, whereas Rittenhouse, I think, did a fairly good job, in my opinion, having watched that testimony, of coming back at whenever he was challenged by lawyers and giving very simple, logical explanations and reactions to some very intriguing and kind of, purposeful questioning. So is that kind of the reason, I guess, that you would choose to put or not put someone on the stand in this case? If they can simplistically explain their side of the story, maybe it makes sense, like in Rittenhouse, whereas Jussie Smollett couldn't answer why he didn't reschedule the exercise that he was planning with the two guys that obviously were paid to beat him up, according to the jury in that case. So is that a huge part of the process, or is that just, you think, the individual outcome that you kind of risk by putting someone on the stand?
No, I think you nailed it, really. The difference between Rittenhouse and Smollett and Potter is, I think, Rittenhouse really stuck to a very basic story. I mean, at the end of the day, you're telling a story to the jury, and these are very complicated legal cases, really. Like in the Potter case, the nuances of proving that you were basically reckless as a police officer is very difficult. It's very nuanced. So you want to simplify that to the jury. You want to just tell them a story. In Rittenhouse, I think the story was fairly simple. The problem that Smollett made, the mistake that he made, was trying to throw everything on the wall legally and trying to see what stuck, right?
Right.
And he made a basic, crucial mistake, which you never do as a defendant. You don't introduce evidence that hurts you, right? It's like, first, do no harm. So at the very least, say nothing, right? And don't add evidence. What Smollett did was, not only did he not say nothing, he added evidence that would otherwise not be in the record, like, for example, about his drug use, that the jury would not have heard if he just shut his mouth. But he made a mistake of trying to finesse the jury and say, let me confuse them with a million different things. Ultimately, that led to his downfall.
Yeah, no, obviously the easiest explanation is always the most commonly believed one. And the longer and the more details you have to add to your side of the story, the worse you look, no matter how, unlikely but possibly true they could be. All right, a couple other quick things. It's the holiday season, which means there's a bunch of holiday lawsuits. I know you guys were talking about this on Legal Face Off. You want to talk about the one in California that happened recently, or are there any other ones that caught your eye in the world of celebrating the holidays through lawyers?
Yeah, we always like to take advantage on our show of any holiday, because inevitably there's just some dumb lawsuits that result from it. And it's funny because usually, Craig, they all come back to the basic theory of responsibility. I'm a defense lawyer, and I defend many stupid lawsuits all the time, frivolous lawsuits. And the ones we see around the holidays are typically ones where people are doing dumb things and not taking responsibility and looking to sue others, right? I mean, there's always the inevitable, mishap involving Christmas lights or taking the tree home. There's always also lawsuits involving people decorating their home and neighbors are unhappy with them. So that's always a lawsuit. But yeah, there's one actually interesting one that happened, that you always see around the holidays of whether putting up a Christmas display only violates the separation of church and state and is a, unwarranted use of state funds for religious grounds. And inevitably those result in the court dismissing them because it's been held that Christmas displays in itself are not religious displays. That's an old case that's been upheld over and over again. So, yeah, these are always interesting lawsuits.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you can hear more of them on the podcast Legal Face Off, which comes to you from the WGN radio family of podcasts. Just one other quick one. I want to ask you about the Eric Clapton lawsuit because I thought it was pretty interesting. He apparently won thousands of dollars from someone that tried to sell a bootleg version of one of his CDs for $11. Is this a precedent-setting case? Does this have value? Or is this just Eric Clapton going after one person that's very, very unlucky?
I mean, you would think Clapton would just sit back and enjoy the royalties of his massive music catalog. Instead, he's literally going after an individual in Germany who sold or tried to sell a bootleg CD online. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, but yeah, he did so, and he actually got her, got damages against her for an $11 CD that she said she purchased at a department store her husband purchased. It may establish a precedent for sure. I mean, listen, when you see, for example, Springsteen a couple of days ago selling his catalog to Sony for $500 million, you realize how valuable this intellectual property is. And just when you thought that you were protected by sitting in your home, doing whatever you want with your music, here comes this multi-Grammy winning recording artist. So be careful, Craig. I know you got a bunch of bootlegs there in your storage closet. Be forewarned.
I will not confirm nor deny that. Thank you, as always, Rich Lenkov, the co-host of Legal Face Off, a premier podcast talking about all things both fun and serious in the world of legal news. And how crazy the Bruce Springsteen thing you mentioned, just real quick. Would you sell your life's work for $500 million?
Well, his catalog was worth about $30 million every year. So if you do the math, he probably wouldn't live long enough, unfortunately, as much of a Springsteen fan as I am, as you know, to make $500 million. So I think he probably did a commendable job for his family and his estate. And that's really the trend that we're seeing with most artists nowadays.
Yeah, look at that. Taylor Swift re-recording all her own music to get the owning rights back, and Bruce just selling it all off. Thank you again. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here with you today. Let's get right to some crazy CNN audio, shall we? I love this. I love several parts of this. So CNN's Leanna Wen said that we should probably just mail COVID tests to every American. It's just another bit of spending. Why not? Just mail tests and have every American be able to get them whenever they need in their own home. Not because it's not like the testing is terribly costly or something that's completely impossible of being found if you need to go get tested, depending on where you live. It might be more challenging than other places, but it would be ridiculous to show up in your mailbox just a free testing kit sent to every single American. I don't even understand why this is an idea, but here we go. Let's try it out.
People what that is.
For people who are gathering indoors over the holidays, I would recommend at this point, when there's so much virus around us, that you have 2 out of the 3 things: vaccination, testing, or masking. So if you are fully vaccinated and ideally boosted, and you want to see other people indoors without a mask, meaning maybe you want to have dinner with them, ideally everybody also gets tested that same day with a rapid test. Now, I know that tests are hard to come by in some parts of the country, but that's the ideal, is that you get tested. If you're going to be, if nobody nobody is vaccinated, or if there's some people there who are unvaccinated, if you're getting together, you should be masked and you should be tested. Basically, you should have 2 out of 3 things: vaccination, testing, or masking at this point with that much virus around us.
Really quickly, in terms of testing, as you said, it needs to be done that same day. So if you took a test, let's say Christmas Eve, and you're meeting up with people on Christmas, you were negative on Christmas Eve, doesn't mean you still are Christmas Day.
I love the way we have this conversation, by the way. Go ahead, continue.
Right. The closer your test is to when you're gathering with people, the better. And I think this is something that the Biden administration really needs to work on. They've done so well when it comes to vaccinations. That's great. But they now need to put the same amount of effort to increasing access to testing. Why not mail test to every American?
Why not? Just send a test. Every single American. You get your free COVID test in the mail. It just sits there until you need it for that one party, that one time. And as we just demonstrated, if you take that test too soon or not close enough to the party, then it might not have any value anyway. But these are all the ways that you can live your normal life, according to CNN and some of the medical experts there. And I will just continue to say, and I know Dr. Fauci drew that same comparison, that if you're vaccinated, you can have a wonderful holiday. You can celebrate Christmas. If you're unvaccinated, it's the dungeon for you. You have to leave, and you have to, I don't know, be branded of some kind. It's a little bit or a lot crazy, depending on who you are and where you are in this country. And I guess the likelihood of even having Omicron or any other variants in your own circle. It's just so interesting because more and more data is suggesting that the newest variant, the one that is causing this virtue signaling, might be really great at evading most of the immunities, most of the protections that are offered by any kind of vaccine anyway, or even any kind of previous infection. That doesn't mean that you're going to get seriously ill and die if you get Omicron, and if you've been vaccinated or if you have a previous natural immunity. It just means, in all seriousness, that the vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting this version of the virus, the variant, which then begs the question as to why so many of our medical experts are saying what they're still saying, pretending as though there is really any difference between those that are vaccinated and those that aren't vaccinated in the world of spreading this virus. And I know that that is a piece of data that still needs to be developed more, and it's something that probably a medical expert needs to be having a conversation with you about, and not some guy on a radio show. But it's just such a weird decision that's being made every time we communicate these points, to say that, you know, these people can celebrate Christmas, these people can't. You should know before you show up at your holiday party who's vaccinated. All of this is designed to create that form of societal pressure that will not make us a happier society, by the way, with all the things, all the challenges that we see, the violence, the murder rate going up in a lot of bigger cities, the just additional amounts of like smash and grab crime and everything. Now let's go ahead and take it a step further and beg all of our society to treat some as though they're unworthy of being in my family at Christmas. That's essentially the request that we're making, that I have to refuse to go. I have to wear a mask. I have to do testing beforehand. Some of those things. Otherwise, I'm not safe and you're not safe. When the reality very likely is that it's irrelevant in the world of transmitting this virus. And I will say this again, I've probably said it several times, it bears repeating, with the Omicron variant likely to become the dominant variant in our society and capable of evading most of the immunities that are provided by the vaccine, outside of the serious illness and likelihood of death, which still seems promising as far as that protection goes. You could go to a party with all vaccinated people, still spread the virus. That's a thing that science seems to think is true. Our political scientists don't seem to want to talk about. More Chad Benson Show in a bit. Greg Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. There is this viral story about a mom who got very upset with a nursery that sent her kids home with a letter from Santa. This is a real story. The mom went to something called Momsnet. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's a website or a group on Facebook, but that's something to complain. She said the letter was written to say all the challenges that Santa was facing up at the North Pole. That the elves had been washing their hands every day. Here's just part of it. Now, let me actually read from it. The elves have been washing their hands and wearing their masks and working around the clock to make sure the toys are ready to deliver to all the good boys and girls. Rudolph and his fellow reindeer are having regular COVID tests. This is a real letter and getting ready for the long journey ahead. And I'm sitting by the fireplace writing this letter and enjoying a lovely mince pie. Well, that's nice of Santa. I am writing to let you know that you have been very good at washing your hands and keeping the germs away. You've also been well behaved this year and have made it into my good list. I am very proud of you, and you have been so amazing. I'd like to get you an extra something special this year. I'll be visiting your home very soon. Keep up the good work. Merry Christmas, Santa Claus. A letter written, a nursery claims by Santa. I'm not going to go any further than that. That got sent home with children and made this mom so upset. She said, would it be right to not even read the letter to the kids? And again, remember that the nursery workers sent the kids home and said, Mom's got a letter from Santa to read to you. Or I guess just make it up and read other things and not the things in this letter. But this is insanity again. This is another demonstration of a need, just a blatant need in our society to have your opinion, your agenda, provided to as many other people as possible. I mean, the whole getting regular COVID tests and getting ready for the long journey ahead is insane. That's just insane. And I'm not trying to be anti those things. I am vaccinated. I've mentioned that before. I've even been booster shotted, and I got COVID. So I have no idea what kind of petri dish of protection I am. But it's the kind of thing that I don't think a nursery should ever choose to have a conversation with kids instead of, letting the parents go whatever direction they want to go with that. And that comes on the heels of that viral story from a couple weeks ago of the kid who got tricked into getting a vaccine at school and then was told to lie about it. He was told, don't tell mom and dad when you go home that you got this vaccine shot at school, which is just, I don't know. It's creating a different version in your own brain of the amount of value or the amount of, opinion you're supposed to be providing to other people in this world. Anyway, let's move on. Some other things out there. Dr. Anthony Fauci popped up with Jake Tapper. He popped up because he had to defend something, or had to correct, I guess I should say, something that our vice president said, saying that we weren't ready or weren't even aware of all the variants that could arrive. I want to demonstrate to you the amount of mental gymnastics Dr. Fauci is going to try to create in this moment to not disagree with the vice president. He's going to say she was misquoted and that she actually is right in this very specific sense. All of this from the guy who used to get praised for disagreeing with former President Trump very publicly. Certainly at times seemed to choose and pick his words in ways that didn't necessarily create an argument, but at other times very much not. And it would seem that this is one of those moments where if former President Trump had said we didn't expect the variants, that Fauci would matter-of-factly look at the camera and be like, I'm sorry, that's not true. But because it's the Biden administration, it feels as though he's taking these extra steps to try to change what our vice president said. And if anyone is ever going to accuse someone of being political and not just a medical professional giving a medical opinion, this would be that moment where you seem to be doing what any other Democrat would do, finding a way to defend someone on your party, in your party, on your side of the aisle, and not just disagree with them.
An interview on Friday. We didn't see Delta coming. I think most scientists did not, upon whose advice and direction we have relied. Didn't see Delta coming. We didn't see Omicron coming. And that's the nature of what this awful virus has been, which, as it turns out, has mutations and variants. Dr. Fauci, perhaps nobody could have seen the specific of Delta or Omicron, but did you not see variants coming, or did you?
Yeah. I'm going to stop for just a second. I don't often praise or give any kind of attaboy to a tapper. But in this case, I love the befuddled way in which he's asking this question, the obviously struggling logically version of saying, wait, Dr. Fauci, you didn't project variants being a thing? And then it's as teed up as it can be, Dr. Fauci, for you to say, in this case, this administration got it wrong.
Yeah, I did. And I think that the vice president's statement was taken a bit out of context. I believe she was referring to the fact that the extraordinary number of mutations and amino acid substitutions, particularly with Omicron, no one had expected it that much, but we were well prepared and expected that we were going to see variants. There's no doubt about that. But I believe that the vice president was referring to the fact, if you look at the number of mutations in Omicron, it's unprecedented. There are about 50 of them.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't referring to this, Dr. Fauci.
30 of them in the spike protein and about 10 to 12 of them in the receptor binding domain.
She was talking about how the vaccines are becoming less effective, among other things, and saying that we just didn't really project all of the variants. And you're obviously saying she was wrong. I don't know why you can't articulate that when you were so good at doing it with the last administration. On to AOC, who is just sweeping every corner of the news media today because of some things she said earlier. Those things include talking about how it's a boys' club and Joe Manchin's a huge problem in that regard. But also the idea that Joe can't explain when he goes back home to his voters why he's anti-Build Back Better. I think he can explain, and I think he has explained what the challenge is. But here's AOC saying he can't and how that's a big problem.
It is extremely difficult to hold together a House majority. And, especially with the razor-thin margin that we have around this agenda. So the idea that Joe Manchin says he can't explain this back home to his people is a farce. I mean, it's a farce in terms of, plain democracy, because I represent more or just as many or more people than Joe Manchin does.
And so I should be more important. So my opinion should be more important because the amount of people, the Senate, the Congress, all of it's just crap. Is that what AOC is saying now? Are you saying that the challenge is now, multifaceted and we have to upend the entirety of how our process works? Because that's a hot take. Or are you just saying that Manchin is a guy that you think, is doing work that obviously is counter to the things you believe, and so now you got to destroy him? That feels like what Democrats are going to try to do. Now that Manchin has said finally that he is definitely a no on that vote. And I can play that audio again if you want it. Here we go.
I've always said this, Brett. If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
He will go on to describe how inflation, how the coronavirus pandemic are all things that are much more important than the ridiculously challenging and just wide-ranging funding of other projects. Makes no sense at this time and is a huge risk to making our inflation much, much worse. And AOC is saying that he's an enemy of the people. I think in some ways it's just so intriguing how all this back and forth is going to continue to go and how Manchin is going to be so attacked, even more so than other high-profile Democrats. Kyrsten Sinema is just as anti a lot of this stuff. I don't know why she wouldn't be attacked as significantly as Joe Manchin, but we'll see. We'll see how all that goes in the remaining days and how Democrats are just infighting. And I think I would even say this just quickly about the problem there is that it demonstrates there's no solid leader at the top. There's no charismatic individual who's pushing the party in a direction to get all those to kind of follow in the footsteps, because Joe Biden is incapable of talking even his side of the aisle into certain things. That should say something. That is fairly telling. All right, one other quick thing, just a more fun thing, something that I saw. This is out of the New York Post. There apparently is a brand new dating term. The dating term is hardballing, and it's not dirty. It's not inappropriate. It's not anything. Get your minds out of the gutter, people. Hardballing is just like any sort of interview, I guess you do, where you're trying to push someone to give you a definitive yes-no answer to a challenging question. It is asking someone if you're actually in a committed relationship, yes or no. There is an expert in the world of dating and other stuff that said that this is a very risky play to make in our current dating world, to try to get someone to decide whether or not you're in a situationship, whether you're in some form of, indetermined, no title dating, or whether you're actually an official couple, but that it might be something that has to happen. and you should hardball when you're ready. I love that phrase. When you're ready to do it, when you're ready to tell somebody that it's, my way or the highway, we got to be together or else it's over, that would be choosing to go the hardball route. I'm not sure if this is something that is going to wind up working for a lot of people. Some matchmakers have also advised on caution here. The only thing I thought when I saw this whole story and read through the description, and certainly young people are the ones that have come up with this term, it's really hard to date now. I didn't have to decide whether or not I had to hardball the missus into being in a relationship with me, and I certainly never knew if we were ever in a situationship or a real dating relationship. I think I just said, hey, you want to be my girlfriend? And she said yes. And that was fine. And we were both good with that. But good luck to those out there dating now. And good luck on deciding when is the right moment to go ahead and go the hardball route. Quick break, a lot more. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be here. I have Husbands in the News. This is a brand new story, or a brand new collection of stories I think I'm going to try out here of just husbands going viral. And I guess they're going viral because people are tricking them into stuff. The first one, a wife made her husband dig through trash for presents that he threw away for hours. So I guess there was some sort of bag of presents, Christmas gifts, that were on the kitchen table. At some point, the wife comes home and realizes they're not there anymore, accuses the husband of throwing them out. The guy can't remember if he threw that out along with a collection of other things. So she sends him out to the dumpster of the apartment they live in, and he digs through it for, I guess, at least a couple hours. During that time, and this is why this story has gone viral at all on social media, the girlfriend, the wife, Bryn Lee Miles, goes to social media and says, hey, I just found that bag of presents I'm telling my husband to find in the trash in my closet. Do I tell him? Which is, by the way, my favorite thing, and it's a very young person thing to do, to watch your significant other digging through trash, frantically looking for gifts that you tell him he threw out. And you got to check with social media first before deciding whether or not you fess up, you admit to this mistake you've made. And I think eventually she was told by a lot of viewers not to do it, but by enough that she did do it. But she thought he had thrown about $100 away in Christmas gifts, and he did not. And this feels like the kind of thing that maybe even our president would go viral for doing, being told by Dr. Jill to dig through the trash. I think that Biden would not be above that in any stretch of the imagination, and I don't think he'd actually be told the truth. Certainly if Kamala was asked, do we tell Biden the truth on this? The answer would be, nah, he doesn't need to know about this one. There are other husbands in the news. There's another guy that went with his wife to get matching tattoos. They wanted to get their wedding date tattooed on their finger in place of their ring. The guy got it wrong. Now, granted, even though that sounds fairly stereotypical of the guy not knowing what the wedding date is, he did know. The wife just wanted it in Roman numerals, and he reversed some I's and some X's. So I guess he made the date something very far in the future and not a real day that has occurred yet, or certainly a day in which they got married. And I love that because truthfully in that one, I can figure out the mistake in all of this. The mistake is very easy. You don't let a husband do something alone if it's your idea. If you have a very specific idea, you do have to oversee its execution. Because a lot of us, myself included, will make these mistakes. And I just love it. The fact that he's like, nah, it's the ex goes, it'll be fine. It'll be great. She'll love it. And not accurate. Swing and a miss there. And then I guess this is one other story of a couple in the news, more so than a husband in the news. But this is a viral post on social media. There's these people at McDonald's. I guess 24 million people have viewed this hilarious video. But there are a couple at McDonald's, and they're sitting there eating their meal. And I guess maybe it's some McDonald's in China. We're not sure exactly where. But they're sitting on branded exercise bikes inside the McDonald's restaurant. So we are to believe, if this isn't faked and probably some sort of social media stunt, that some McDonald's somewhere on this planet has an exercise room in the back where you order the meal and then you sit down to an exercise bike-esque chair and table and eat your food while also, getting a few minutes of spin class in. I love this idea to be honest. Like, a little bit of me is actually tempted to try to make this a thing more places. Because if you want to be very healthy, I think you'd probably argue that you should be doing things like skipping the McDonald's. If you don't want to be that healthy, but you still want to feel like you're getting the workout in, then two birds, one stone. Do them both at the same time. 24 million views, 2 million likes, 38,000 comments on social media with people saying that this is hilarious, that the concept's amazing, and several people saying they'd love to have one of these. Although one person did say they feel like it's an episode of the TV show Black Mirror and can't actually be actual life. I agree on all sides, but I do think it'd be tremendously interesting for us at least to try this out, to go down the road of what it would be like in that world of having, and it doesn't have to stick to just McDonald's. You could be any kind of area, any kind of fast food restaurant. Just see how people feel about it. Just see if there's any kind of interest in it. I know we have the workout desk at work now, the stand-up desk and all that kind of stuff. So, why not? Why not go that road? I can't say any more. I don't think I would go myself, but I wouldn't be completely upset if I saw one. I would find it as amusing as these people did. There's this other story that's gone viral. The New York Post wrote about this woman who put a terrible haircut up on social media. She said that she went to go get a haircut for her best friend's wedding, that the haircut was just the worst ever, with shaved sides of the head and whatnot, and that there's no way to fix this in time for the wedding. And this post went viral, I guess, for several reasons, including a lot of people having a similar experience at some point in their life. I will say there's no worse feeling than getting a really bad haircut before an important event. If you have had that happen, I have done that. Although I guess people would argue it probably was my fault. This was early 2000s. I was a younger man. I might have got my tips frosted is the sentence I think you're supposed to say when you get the highlights in the hair. I also might have had that haircut done at a Walmart location just before my sister's wedding. And there might be video or photo proof of said haircut, but it wasn't a great day. And all of it honestly was, the wedding was great. My hair wasn't, that's a rough take. My hair wasn't the best. All of it was honestly because I also had some rogue facial hair that mom wanted me to get fixed. And then I just went a different way with it. But I get it. I feel for this woman. Her name is Shelby. Millions and millions of views on social media. I'm not sure if that translates to any financial dollars, but I really wish I could have made my own money off of my terrible, terrible haircut. But just darn it, TikTok wasn't anywhere near as important back then. All right, I got to take a break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be with you. Joe Manchin, not thrilled with Build Back Better. He is out.
I've always said this, Brett. If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
This would be a no from one Joe Manchin. You know what's really interesting about this is not necessarily just that Joe is out on a piece of legislation that is purposefully complicated, spends way too much money at a time that we can't afford it. But what's really interesting is the amount of reactions that have happened since. They've been all over the place. There are several people that are asking whether or not Joe Manchin is even, really secretly in charge, or whether Biden is actually the president. That is one of the things, one of the reactions that's been most prevalent in all of this, and one that I find tremendously interesting. I guess Charlemagne the God would get some credit for asking this of our vice president, which caused its own unique and weird, awkward moment in their interview. Honestly, it was a very awkward and strange interview probably most of the time. And you would think that it was a friendly conversation, because Charlemagne is by no way, shape, or form a Republican, but he did ask that same question, that same idea, and he alluded to it in the context of this, that Manchin has been able to kind of single-handedly, although actually there have been other Democrats that have also supported his position, but stop Biden from his biggest agenda pieces like this one. So Charlemagne asks an easy, not, incredibly challenging question, and Kamala's staff tries to end the interview before she gives the strangest response with just a building fake sense of anger. Here we go.
Who's the superhero that's going to speak against Joe Manchin? No. I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry. I just want to interrupt.
Again, as she's getting interrupted as they're trying to end it, like, that's not a terribly challenging question, and to pretend that it is ridiculous, because essentially it's asking who has more power here. Shouldn't the president be capable of stopping infighting in his own party? There are other ways to ask it that are not quite as on the nose as that way, but this should not be the end of an interview type of question.
I'm sorry. I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Simone. I'm so sorry, Charlemagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice President?
So I'm sorry. We got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
I love the fact that this aide, and I'm going to go ahead and play the answer that inevitably the vice president gave. But I love that the aide was like, you know what, I'm going to save this. I'm going to jump in, I'm going to interject, and I'm going to pretend we can't hear them anymore. The connection is bad, and I'm going to get this all to go away. That's how little faith the people around our leaders have in them. They want to be the ones to stop things from happening. They want to be the ones to lie about connections, because they don't even trust people like the vice president to answer questions like this. That should be pretty telling. Here is Kamala's answer.
I can hear you.
Oh, so who's the
I
real?
can hear you.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlemagne.
I really,
Come on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a
and
problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris. And the reality is, because we are in office, we do the things like the child tax credit.
Yeah. Anyway, talking points time, and I'm going to skip out. I love how she gets like differing varying degrees of mad as she's deciding what to do, because it's just a mess. That's just the worst version of not knowing whether or not your team is going to be able to can an interview for you by lying about the connection. And then when they don't, or you choose to not let them, I don't even know how that happened, because she's just looking at the camera kind of blank-faced the entire time. Then you choose to answer the question in the way that you do. And I don't even think that our vice president hates those jokes, to be honest. I don't think that she's anti the idea that she is secretly in charge, outside of the fact that so many of the Biden decisions have been terrible. So maybe that's the only reason that our vice president wouldn't want to take responsibility for this, is not because she wants to, make sure everyone knows that Biden is in charge, because the reality is that it's been so bad. And then we play this in contrast to our former President Trump having his own conversation and also alluding to the idea that Biden is not in charge.
He called Kamala Harris president again.
Oh.
Do you think someone else is directing him?
Well, I never called Mike Pence president. I'll tell you, I can't imagine what's going on. It's hard to believe.
Who's running the country?
Well, think of it. It was so obvious in this case, because 450,000, he was incensed. He was very upset by that question asked by a very good reporter, actually.
By the way, Trump is now talking about a question that Peter Doocy asked Joe Biden, President Biden, about the amount of money we would give to those who were separated from their families after crossing the border illegally and having kids that we can't reunite back with parents. There is some conversation about that amount of money being as high as $500,000. And this is something that Biden seemed completely unaware of, that he then went back and researched and found was accurate, which is crazy in and of itself, that he wouldn't know about those things, but that he would get so mad at a reporter, in this case, Peter Doocy of Fox News, for asking it, and then wind up finding out that, you know what, I was wrong. It's just so out of touch with your own decision-making, your own administration, that it's a valuable question, the one that Charlemagne the God asks to the vice president, even though it's being treated like it's not.
But he was very angry at that question. Like, how dare you? What a stupid question. Of course, the next morning, he was saying how, yeah, this is something that we think is excellent. That really means, in the truest sense, that he is not running the country. Because there's no way you go from indignation to, oh, that's wonderful.
You know, I got to agree. There's not a lot of times when you'd see, say, a boss, a leader of any kind of place that maybe you're working for, just being utterly upset at the idea of something, just utterly against any sort of version of this being a thing. And then the next day it being actually implemented, or the next day it actually being talked about by that same leader like it's actually a good idea. Even they would know in our own everyday lives that those kind of contrasts, those kind of demonstrations of lack of actual control are negative and not valuable. One other thing in the world of Build Back Better, this is Senator Bill Cassidy. A lot of people have said, and I know these people are predominantly on the right, that have said that the plan was just bad, that it's just bad legislation. It's just bad policymaking in the overstuffed aspects of it, and having it get whittled down, and now just completely still not being a yes vote from some of the only rational, it seems, Democrats in the Senate, demonstrates just as much of a problem in the creation of the bill in the first place as it does an inability for Democrats to get together on an issue. Cassidy says it's not really anybody's fault that this isn't going to pass.
I think it fell upon its own weight. It was a terrible bill. It would have added to our current inflation, which is at a 40-year high, and would have added $3 trillion in 10 years to our nation's debt and deficit. And the second most expensive item was to give a tax break to millionaires and billionaires who lived in New York, New Jersey, and states like that. I think it actually collapsed under its own weight. It was a bad, bad, bad bill.
Yeah, a lot of people will say that it's just not, and certainly not the right time for the amount of spending on additional projects that a lot of people say are just like the wish list projects of the Democrats. That just doesn't make sense to a lot of individuals in our society at all. One other quick thing that I do want to also play, if we have time for it here before we take a break. Trump did also talk about Biden's weaknesses when it comes to China and some of the conversations going on there. This is actually, I think, in my opinion, tied to the way in which Biden is weak on an international stage with most of the other world leaders. Certainly our former president, accused often of not playing nice with some of our allies, yet I don't think many would accuse him of being someone who was a pushover with anyone and everyone he spoke with. Putin seems to have no respect for our current president, and the lack of interest in getting China to be more forthcoming about COVID is just insane. It's shocking. Just truthfully thinking about it one more time before I play this audio, with the amount of havoc that COVID has wreaked on the world, and certainly with Omicron now being a conversation happening more and more, I guess, at least on news stations and in the world of those kind of conversations, wouldn't it benefit us even more to still find out the fact that we don't know how this originated and can't know without a more accommodating and forthcoming China is just insane. It's not political. It's not to the left. It's not to the right. It's just nuts that we can't understand or get a better version of explanation as to how this thing got created in the first place. And it would take a very strong reaction to get us there, one that Biden is incapable of, according to our previous president.
And Biden said, I will solve it. Well, he couldn't solve the H1N1, which was another very minor by comparison. That was a disaster, and everybody knew that. But he said he's going to solve it. Well, as you know, and everybody reports it, even the fake news sometimes, but there are more deaths this year than there were with me. And we have all of these vaccines and we have all of these incredible therapeutics. They're not doing their job. They don't know what the hell they're doing. The mandates are killing our economy.
But Joe Biden still has not brought up the origins of COVID to Xi Jinping. They spoke 4 times this year. Why do you think that is?
Because he's afraid of him. And I think he's afraid of the fact that they gave billions of dollars to his son. And
so they have something on him.
Yeah, of course they do.
It's insane to think, and whether or not you believe the comments of the past president and the amount of money that Hunter Biden did get from Chinese government individuals, all of those things aside, the actual truth in all of this is that it is mind-boggling to say the least. Again, I can't think of better ways to describe this, that we still don't know the answer as to how this virus was created, and that we probably will never know. I don't understand how in today's society, with the advancements in all the different ways that we have them, and when we know the problem is that China just won't tell us more and that they should know more, that everybody's just deciding that that's okay. It makes absolutely no sense. A quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in, so please blame me for what's about to happen next. I don't understand why I can't get over this, but there is a viral obituary written by a son about his mom that I can't. It's very funny. People are saying online that it's very funny, and I can't help but want to read some of it to you. And I don't know why. I'm not sure that this will be the best of radio, but here we go. We're going to do it anyway. The obituary starts out by saying a plus-size Jewish lady redneck died in El Paso on Saturday. Again, this is all written with love, I guess, by this woman's son. He said it is hardly news, at all, or even good news if you're the type that subscribes to the notion that anybody not named you dying in El Paso, Texas is good news, in which case, if I got news for you, the bawdy, fertile, red-headed matriarch of a sprawling Jewish, Mexican, redneck American family has kicked it. People seem to enjoy the fact that this guy is writing stuff like kicked it as opposed to passed away. This was not good news to her family, of course, her surviving children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, many of whom she even knew and in her own way loved. This is just verbatim reading the obituary. There will be much mourning in the many glorious locales she went bankrupt in. I guess she attended a few different parties at bars in her life. This includes her birthplace in Pennsylvania, where she first fell in love with ham and atheism, places in North Carolina where her dreams, credit rating, and marriage are all buried. And of course, finally, the last place she lived in her life, Miami, Florida, where her parents, uncles, aunts, and eternal hopes of all Miami Dolphins fans are also buried pretty deep. Again, this is an obituary for a woman that passed away, written by her son. He then also writes, Renee was preceded in death by Don Shula. Not that they knew each other. He didn't write that part, but just that they wanted to mention it. Finally, he said quite a few noteworthy things about how, fun, how she would disrespect, trash talk, and do all kinds of other stuff. It did say that when she moved to the South, she turned into a model citizen. She became a model parent, a super mom, the kind of perfect PTA lady, volunteer, amateur baker. And then it says, ha, 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 ha. Just kidding. Just kidding, y'all. Renee, Rosie to her friends, was a broad who never met a stranger, worked a double shift, ate a ton of carbs, and could occasionally be convinced to stir the stew, but she was not a PTA citizen. I can't get over it. How much of this, obituary is very tongue-in-cheek, very making fun of, but for that reason, maybe very, very viral. A lot of people seem to love it. The amount of jokes that are being made at the woman's expense, certainly it seems as though she's the kind of person who would appreciate said jokes. It is interesting to me, though, just real quick as I read through that and see it mentioned all over social media and Twitter as like a funny, valuable thing, that this is a pretty good example of some unique areas where comedy is still allowed. For the most part, this would be woked right out of us. This would be cancel cultured if this person were famous, if this person's parent were famous, if anybody had any sort of reason to care about this story other than to take, the shocking tone of it as humor. I think that everybody would be very upset. I just think that it's not being given that reaction because no one had, any knowledge going in of who these people are. But I think there'd be a whole bunch of people who'd just be, complaining and saying all kinds of things on social media because that's the culture we live in. So it's kind of shocking to see this and the value of it and how many people are loving it, because I think it does go against a lot of the things that this woke cancel culture version of society is trying to tone down. And it actually also reminds me of South Park. Their most recent episode of their COVID special came out last week and is being praised by a lot of people as still being willing to make jokes that a lot of media no longer make. And it certainly targeted pretty much every side of an issue. And I also found it very funny. All right, quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here with you. Sometimes I think a lot of people in the world of politics get accused of speaking hyperbolically. I don't know if you're going to feel this is one of those times. Our president recently said that for unvaccinated, for this holiday season, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death. Again, if you're unvaccinated, I'll go ahead and play the audio for you. But that is a fairly bold jump to decide that that's what it means in this world compared to the vaccinated. Let's go ahead and get it.
For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for unvaccinated. For themselves, their families, and the hospitals they'll soon overwhelm.
For themselves, their families, and the hospitals that they'll soon overwhelm. I don't know what this is generalizing, by the way, or what, leaps in logic are happening more significantly. The first of which being that if you're unvaccinated, I guess according to Mr. Biden, Joe Biden, our president, I should call him President Biden, I guess, that means that everybody around you is probably unvaccinated. So they'll all be at risk, themselves, their families, the hospitals that they overwhelm. Now, as far as the coronavirus conversation continues to go, I just want to make some corrections to some of the stuff that I've seen out there in the news and developing in the world of the Omicron variant. The vaccine might not prevent anything other than that serious, severe illness and or death, which means that some of these things might occur for the vaccinated as well as the unvaccinated, or maybe, just maybe, out of curiosity, maybe they don't occur at all. Now, granted, I could also play audio of the outgoing director of NIH, that's Dr. Francis Collins, saying that if you're unvaccinated, you can't travel or you shouldn't travel this holiday season, which just seems to be yet another version of only some people get to live in our society. And if you've chosen not to be vaccinated, we want you to be removed from society as a whole.
Certainly means if you're not vaccinated, I would say travel is really not a great idea because you are in a very vulnerable place now with Omicron.
And he also apparently seems to think that Omicron has changed that significantly, or changed that to a degree that now, you're far too at risk. There is also some data so far that's emerged from South Africa that's not, I guess, well studied or a lot of places yet and still needs to develop more, that is hinting toward maybe the Omicron variant being a less severe form of COVID. And yet we have a lot of our medical professionals, a lot of our medical experts, the high-profile ones, jumping to these conclusions. And you have the president saying that if you're unvaccinated, you're in for a winter of severe illness and death. which, again, that feels hyperbolic, and yet maybe some people would say it is not. You do also have Kathy Hochul out there saying that wearing a mask for a kid is no big deal. There have been some studies and some things that show that mentally it might be more challenging than we think for kids to truly understand the need of a mask, and also for kids that take it off a lot, maybe the reason they're getting in a lot of trouble if they're at school or something and being yelled at. There is a mental component to a child being told that our community isn't safe unless you're wearing a mask, but not apparently according to the governor of New York.
Very minor intrusion, if you will, if it's even that. All the children in the state have been wearing masks since the beginning. It's not that big a deal. It'll help save lives, keep them healthy, and that's all we're asking for. So there has been some pushback, but we're not backing down for this. We think it's important.
I would also recommend that the governor get a better internet connection, because that distortion, I think, happened in a lot of places. We apologize for the audio quality there. It's just very interesting that so much of this narrative building happens in the world of politicians, or even as I'm playing some of the medical professionals, where it disregards many of the things that become maybe facts, and just decides to go with the prevailing belief, whether or not it's actually proven to be true, and treat it as though it is a fact. I do have Fauci also talking about holiday travel and saying that those that are vaccinated can act like regular human beings, and those that are not cannot.
No, I do. If you are vaccinated and boosted and are prudent when you travel, when you're in an airport, to be wearing a mask all the time, you have to be wearing a mask on a plane. Do not do things like go to gatherings where there are people who you do not know what their vaccination status is. If you do that, and some people are even going the extra step or the extra mile, of maybe even getting tested when you have people coming over the house. We now have a much wider availability.
And actually, a CNN doctor said that we should probably just send tests to every single American so that they have them. Just all of this is fear-mongering, I think, in my opinion. And I know that it's just an opinion. It's not a medical expert opinion. But we're weeks, months, years probably away from understanding a lot of the realities that we talk about on a day-to-day basis, certainly weeks or months from understanding a lot more about this specific variant that's becoming more and more a topic of conversation. And just, again, realize that there are medical experts out there telling you that some people can have Christmas and some people can't, and that is why so many are upset. Actually, I mentioned South Park earlier, the South Park special that's out now. I think the second part of probably, I imagine there might be more series pieces here, although they did come to the end of their story, made a lot of jokes pretty much at everyone's expense in the world of coronavirus. But they did have one poignant moment toward the tail end of the episode that I really liked, where they had two characters standing next to each other. Neither one of them are important enough to mention, or even if they were, I don't think you need to know South Park characters. And one being a anti-mask, anti-vaccine character, I guess. The other one being the exact opposite. And both of them apologizing to each other and saying that maybe they got high and mighty. Maybe their opinion came from all these certain places of disagreement and not actually any of the things going on in the world of the illness itself. And how interesting is that, just as a thought, as an idea, that most people out there who feel so very strongly on whatever side of the conversation they're on might feel that way more because of the conversations we've had since the pandemic started a couple years ago than an actual strong belief one way or the other on things like wearing a mask, getting a vaccine, any of that. And I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it was a poignant, interesting thought that some of those beliefs on whatever side of the aisle or whatever side of that conversation you land on might have been deepened by the way we all acted as a society. And I think that that's probably true, in all honesty, that all of the argument, all of the back and forth, you should do, you shouldn't do kind of things, it works the same way. And this is probably a bad comparison, but I'm going to make it. The same way as if you're dealing with a child who doesn't want to do something, you're telling them to do, or vice versa. You want them to stop doing something that they want to do. Whatever it is, if you're too strong about your advice on whatever side of that conversation with a kid you're on, they're unlikely to follow it just because it'll make them mad that you gave them the advice so strongly. And that's what's kind of happened in our society. We have all these people on one side of a conversation kind of yelling at how bad the other side is. We have the president of the United States saying that if you're unvaccinated this winter, you are setting yourself up for severe illness, death, and you're going to flood the hospitals. And that's just insane. That's just a crazy hyperbolic take. And yet I'm sure, half or so of many audiences feel as though that's completely fair to say to Americans that live in this country that aren't all, by the way, Republicans. They aren't all people that vote on one side of the aisle, those who choose to not get vaccinated. That's another terrible lie of this whole thing. And yet that is just a comfortable version of where we're at right now. So I do think that our inability to disagree, to argue, to have conversations with each other at all has certainly further pushed the divide between both sides. And then you have political leaders saying, look, one other example real quick. All the smash and grab things that are going on throughout the West Coast and honestly throughout other parts of this country, they all came from and are very easily, the origin of these things. You can point to the rhetoric, the conversations, the protections, the lack of legal ramifications for going after people, for rioting, looting, for making certain decisions, making certain political speeches. That all leads to people feeling emboldened enough to just start robbing people, robbing companies in broad daylight. And I don't laugh because I find that funny. I laugh because of how ridiculous it is that our society gets to that point. And then you have these same politicians out of San Francisco or wherever going on television and saying, now is the time for law and order. Now is the time to actually, no longer tolerate this level of crime happening in our own society. And that is hilariously, just in my opinion, so demonstrative of these problems that exist when you give rhetoric speeches, when you give speeches intent on getting people to, agree with the extreme of position you can take because it helps you politically, as opposed to having a conversation about what's good for our society. Just months ago, these same leaders were saying how, people were treated unfairly or this and that. And for that reason, a lot of these things that are going on in our society that are bad can just be ignored. And now that's no longer the case because it got too bad. The situation got worse and worse until eventually you said, all right, maybe there's a reason for things like police in our society. And I do think, however silly it is to try to wrap this into a circle before I take a break, that was expertly pointed out on this recent episode of South Park. They, even at the very beginning of one of the two episodes, showed a completely shut down police office, a police headquarters that said hiring outside the front, and obviously people choosing not to work there. If we vilify those who protect us, they stop doing it, and society gets worse. And that is what has obviously occurred. I won't go as far as to say the solution that South Park presented was a good one, that everyone should just get high. But I will say that episode made me think about some of the reasons that maybe we are so far apart. This rant is now over. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
If you're part of the politically exhausted majority, don't fear. Your time to be validated and rejuvenated is here. Wake up. It's the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back after the holidays. Much deserved extended vacation for Chad. Senator Elizabeth Warren and a couple other Senator, I think Cory Booker, have tested positive for COVID-19. I almost called her Senator Karen because of the Elon Musk burn, and I stopped myself. Now's not the time to make that joke, not to call her Senator Karen. It's a funny joke, though. But Elizabeth Warren tested positive. They are doing okay as of right now. They are fully vaccinated, too, and they even got booster shots, I believe. Some of the people. And it's kind of crazy, too, just real quick, in that world of just mentioning COVID cases, how the NBA had to reschedule games. The NFL had to do some stuff. I think the Premier League in Europe canceled a whole bunch of soccer games, matches, all of this going on because of outbreaks that are occurring with fully vaccinated teams. So intriguing as far as conversations go into that world of does the vaccine prevent against the things that sometimes you're told it prevents against? And is it a reason that you should or shouldn't go to your Christmas holiday party? I would say go ahead. Enjoy it. It's the holiday season, and you're a human being. You get to be treated like one. In other news, I saw this story and loved it a lot. It's out of Minnesota. A teen was praised for her quick thinking that saved somebody's life in a McDonald's drive-thru. So this woman, I guess, comes through with her kid, and they order some food, including some chicken nuggets. They then pull out away from the drive-thru. But the teenager who's working that drive-thru, her name is Sydney, she's 15 years old, saw the woman starting to, it seemed as if she was choking. She was moving about kind of in stress. Her daughter, who was in the car with her, started to be moving around in stress. So Sydney, who is undergoing first aid training by the Red Cross, went through the window of the fast food place, ran to the car, found that the woman was indeed choking, yelled for some other dude to help her give the Heimlich maneuver to the woman, which this other guy did, and the chicken nugget shot out of the mouth and saved the woman's life. I can't even fathom what it would be like to share this story at the holidays with all your family. Like, I went to McDonald's the other day and I brought along the kid, and then I almost died, and then a person in the drive-thru saved my life. I sometimes think about all the ways in which we're having, arguments or disagreements and, customer service struggles with the impatience of some customers, and customers struggle with the inability for some companies to, live up to the previous standard of servicing people because of the version of society we're in now and the lack of people working places. And then you got this kid in Minnesota saving someone's life at a drive-thru just because they notice. I don't even know how many times I've even thought that the people in the drive-thru after they gave me food were still paying attention to me as I drove away. Much less would notice me if I was starting to choke on a chicken nugget. And the fact that it was a chicken nugget, too, a food product I love a lot, makes me feel as though I need to be wary. Now, maybe I won't go get my 10-piece, 20-piece chicken nugget for lunch like I've gotten sometimes because of the off chance that it could kill me. But again, I really hope that if that does happen, that I have a worker like Sydney. I just can't believe it. Every part of that story and the idea of it is wonderful. In other news, if you want to be creeped out a little bit, I think I can go ahead and help you there too. NASA released audio of a moon of Jupiter that's making weird noises. I love the setup for this. When I play it, you're going to think I'm playing like an old-timey television show that's making robot noises, because it really sounds identical to some of that stuff that you've heard before on TV shows and whatnot. But I guess these are real sounds coming from a moon of Jupiter that shouldn't be making noises the way that they're making them. Yet another demonstration that aliens exist? I don't know. Could this be explained elsewhere by other scientists? Maybe. Maybe it has in this same article that I'm playing it from, but I don't understand all that. So who cares? Here's the sound. Now, I don't know if everything is actually the sound that the moon is making. I think some of that radar stuff is probably just what, the noises we make when we check for it. But the big whooshing noise is the one that should scare us, I guess. And that's just a noise we found now. I love how close we're getting to admitting that aliens are a thing, because I think that eventually we are going to have that. And I continue to say, and I know I've said it here before, that if we have Joe Biden for that press conference, so many misses exist there. It'll be so much more boring and just not what I want it to be. And I don't even need Trump. I want Trump as the president to tell us that aliens are real and do a joint press conference with them. But I would need so many people before a Biden. In other news, just a quick thing. This is out of a couple different places, but I think this is from Sweden, actually. A new court case found that 10 products that claim to protect people from 5G cell network radiation actually caused radiation themselves. People were buying products that put them at more risk than the thing they thought they were protecting themselves from. I guess this is just a quick PSA. Don't buy things like that. You don't know what they are or the value they have, and you don't really know if you should be afraid of 5G. Anyway, one last quick one, too. Actually, I think I have a couple more seconds for this one. This is a Wall Street Journal article. Apparently, we're all cursing more. The pandemic first started to make kids curse more. There was a study that proved that about a year ago. and I guess it was because they were copying their parents. But now, parents are just dropping bad words all the time because, well, we're stressed, people. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I'll be back with you again soon.
This is the Chad Benson Show.